Good evening. Oh my God, I got my fan section right here. The heckler. Is my hair okay?
Yeah.
Great.
Oh, guys, I honestly, I feel so privileged to be out here with you tonight in my hometown, and I thank you for having me. I think what I'd like to do is talk a little bit. I write all my words down, because as Luann was explaining in a loud voice earlier, I get nervous. My brother said to me last night, you mean you don't extemporize the whole thing? I'm like, no, oh no, I could go off on a winding road and never come back. So no, I tend to kind of organize myself and write it down. But so I'll do a little talking, and then I hope to have a conversation with you. There really isn't anything that you can't ask me. And after that, as Kyle just shared with you, I'm happy to sit down and sign some autographs if you like. That would be fun.
Woo!
So the first line of a one-woman show that I conceived for myself and tells the story of my evolution as a romantic and sexual human being goes something like this. I've looked at most everything in my life that interested me, and I've asked one simple question. How do I get that in my mouth?
Woo.
Oh, this might provoke your imagination some.
What?
Now put that aside for a moment. Throughout my childhood, I was sweetly serenaded by my mother as she put me to bed with this lilting original lullaby she composed just for me. Her song carried a simple, repetitive message that made me the center of my parents' universe. Robin is a good girl. Everyone loves Robin. Daddy loves his Robin girl. Mommy loves her Robin. Everyone loves Robin. And the verses went on. Kevin loves his sister. Christopher loves his sister. Everyone loves Robin. Anyway, it's such a sweet, reassuring message for a little girl to hear. And if this point of view was carried into young adulthood, it might give that young lady, now all grown up, an inflated sense of how people felt about her. I can tell you quite confidently that other than Luann, everybody doesn't love me. Just ask my 3 ex-husbands.
Oh, God.
Now for some deep intel into my background, let me layer into the mix my grade school report cards. Now the design of my kindergarten report card, some of you may remember these, charmingly depicts stick figures in scenes from the life of a typical 5-year-old. They're playing, the child playing with their classmates, or taking a nap, or raising the hand and ask a question, listening to a story being read to them. Well, on pink paper that I still have, 57 years later, and over those stick figures illustrating a child's talents, Mrs. Steinbarge, my kindergarten teacher, she predicted my entire life. Responds well to music. Excellent, she wrote in her teacher perfect longhand. Takes part in dramatic play and games. Excellent again. I express myself with paint, clay, crayons, blocks, and scissors. Excellent, she wrote. Superior. And finally, works well and plays with others. She printed boldly over the stick figures, bossy at times. Teachers also have a section of the report card that offered parents feedback on their work and social habits. A child's ability to keep a neat desk or listen carefully, make a good effort. Now, according to Mr. Purcelli, my 5th grade teacher, I needed improvement in the following areas: listening, respecting the opinions of others, following directions, and exercising self-control. He commented in the margin under uses time wisely, how can she when she's minding other people's business? My whole life in these cards, it's who I am. In grade school, my parents introduced me to the typical extracurricular activities: piano lessons, Girl Scouts, church youth group, clarinet lessons, sports, and so on. My mother, Carol Curtis, was a fine musician, a beloved organist at the First Presbyterian Church in Whitesboro, and a sought-after piano accompanist. I loved music. I have loved music all my life because of her. My dad was athletic, loved basketball, golf, tennis, He was the type to galvanize the neighborhood kids on our block to play kick the can or hide and seek, always encouraging kids to be physically active. Because of him, I played field hockey, I played basketball and volleyball and softball and track. I was an athletic klutz. I brought more enthusiasm than skill to the games, but from sport, I learned the concept of team. And whether I'm involved in a committee to change the world or raise money for a charity, a theater production, or even a real estate transaction, I thrive in a team experience. Working in community with others has always engaged my spirit more completely than anything I would ever achieve solo. My folks also put me in dance classes, and at my first dance recital, I figured out if I slipped my arm down the inside of my leotard, I could wave at the audience through my crotch. My parents decided I was a better comic than dancer and pulled me from the class. I loved school. I loved everything about school. The anticipation of the next day and what it might bring. So much so excited that I went through a brief phase where I dressed for school the night before. Let me explain. My parents would put me to bed in our small ranch home where I occupied the middle bedroom of 3. My brother's on one side, my parents on the other. You could hear pins drop. I would lie there for what seemed like forever until I heard the easily recognizable theme. Da 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 da, da 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 da. I'm dating myself now, but that's The Tonight Show, which I think at that time came on at 11:30. Was it 10:30, 11:30?
Yeah.
And I would quietly lift the covers, ease myself out of my little twin bed, and move at glacial speed to my closet. The closet had 2 of those heavy solid doors that groaned when you moved them, so millimeter by millimeter I opened my closet door. I got out my little pleated skirt and the sweater that went with it. I put them down on the bed, I closed the door, I got my jammies off, I put my whole school ensemble for the next day, I made my bed, I folded my jammies, I put them underneath my pillow, and I got back on top of the bed like a corpse. You know, pushing my pleats down so that they wouldn't wrinkle, just like this, ready for school the next day. Well, not long into this proclivity, a babysitter caught me. She caught me out of bed where she had just put me 30 minutes ago. I was sufficiently embarrassed, stopped climbing out of bed at night, and got ready for school in the morning just like all the other kids. Now, right around that same age, 10, 11 years old, I became obsessed with the crime of murder. Gruesome, right? First, it was the murdered nurses in Chicago. Then it was the Clutter family in Kansas. In Cold Blood was written by Truman Capote, told the story of the Clutters in 1966, and then the movie came out in 67. Much later, Helter Skelter, about Charles Manson, gripped my imagination. I mean, there was a time when I could tell you every detail of almost any murder that captured the headlines. My budding survival instincts kicked in, and I began to practice murder drills, planning my escape from any room in my home should a killer enter our house at 19 Cedar Lane in New York Mills. I practiced climbing out the windows, escaping to the ground below, or finding clever places to hide. I figured out how to completely disappear into the drum of a clothes dryer. I loved the Beverly Hillbillies and Jethro becoming a double knot spy. I thought that was the coolest thing. I watched Get Smart, and I pretended, like Don Adams, that I had a phone in the heel of my shoe. I saved bazooka wrappers to order the decoder ring and the disappearing ink. I used to spy on total strangers at the Boston store, following them around the store. The way espionage and crime fascinated me, you would think I would have studied criminal justice, possibly in college, and maybe joined the CIA. But no, there I was at SUNY Oswego, and somehow my passion for police work and spying became a liberal arts major in communications and a minor in theater. And I can't honestly explain why. Granted, music and theater were constant themes in my life at the time. I was the only female college freshman to be selected for a 20-member, very select singing group called State Singers. My 4 years performing and touring with this group around the state to encourage attendance to the college were some of my most thrilling musical experiences. My 4 years performing, I did musical theater in the summers, both in Auburn, New York. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Springside Inn in Auburn, and I also went up to Algonquin, Maine for a summer. I played all the wenches of the musical stage, Nancy and Oliver, Eve and Applause, and Aldonza and Man of La Mancha. And I loved my college experience, just like I loved high school. The 4 years it took me to achieve a bachelor's gave me a chance to grow up, see my first foreign film, perform in front of a larger audience on tour, live off campus, spend a semester in London, and travel Europe on a Eurail pass. Gave me my first great love experience and laid the foundation for lifelong friendships. My college experience was rich beyond my expectations. But although I graduated summa cum laude, my academics ill-prepared me for the workforce. People might imagine that someone crazy enough to go into the entertainment industry or to want to be an actress must have wanted it for their entire lives. Not me. I didn't dream in 1,000 years I was good enough to be an actress. I expected the joy that I experienced at the amateur level, the college level of theater, would be totally ruined by the criticism and constant rejection of a professional pursuit. Yet I wasn't qualified to do much else. I remember coming of late age in the late 70s when a young woman could be anything she wanted to be. And I remember thinking, yeah, but I don't want to be an astronaut. A college theater buddy asked me to move with her to Big Apple. And without a single other prospect, I said yes. And with my mom's and dad's encouragement and support, I naively went off to New York City to see if I fit into show business. I love New York State and everything about it. Our trees, our majestic mountains, our back roads through small hamlets and verdant farms, our spectacular rivers like the Hudson to the St. Lawrence, our bridges, our lakes, our gorgeous autumns, and quiet, stark winters and rainy springs. When you live where there's only one season, guys, you realize how much your soul fed upon the missing seasons. Our sky and its ever-changing cloud formations just slay me. Who wouldn't want to be a kid growing up in New York Mills? I loved everything about our quaint hometown. Our mayor owned a filling station. It was like Mayberry, Mayberry RFD. What is it, Mayberry?
Yeah.
Yeah. New York Mills was honest and kind, Polish and Italian, German and Lebanese, a hard-working community that cared for their children and showed up for them, family first. And you could ride a bike anywhere. And we played and played and played on our block. You had to call us home when it got dark. I loved growing up in New York Mills. So the way I survived pursuing a career so far away from home was to recreate my little town. No matter where I lived, I'd make my immediate surroundings like being in a small village. I went to the same gas station. I went to the same dry cleaners. I went to the same grocer and convenience store, the same Greek diner and the same watering hole. I got to know these people, the small business owners, the waitresses, the checkout girl. And my universe in the sprawling metropolises of LA and New York became more manageable and more like home, less overwhelming and survivable. As a small town girl, I had a trusting nature. When you go out into the world with a childhood like ours and like mine, you think nothing of getting into a car with a stranger because they've offered you a lift, they're going the same way you are, and what's wrong with that? And you let a stranger into your apartment because they're standing outside in the cold waiting for a neighbor to come home who also lives in the building. And perhaps like me, you end up leaping out of a car while it's moving because the person who offered you that ride is not nice. And you end up being robbed right under your nose in your own apartment because that was this stranger's ploy, to be let in, out of the cold, and rob you in plain sight. I let danger in, and I learned the hard way that not everyone is kind like they are in New York Mills, and that bad people are cunning. And no, Mom, not everybody loves me. The entertainment industry had dangers of its own. I knew better than to fall for the tactics of the casting couch. And as for the Me Too movement, which I completely support and believe in, I can count on one hand the times men in superior positions may have done or said something offensive in a work setting, but no permanent harm was ever done. Contrary Contrary to the advice given actors to volunteer when asked, sure, I can do that, when they really couldn't, I didn't pretend to be able to ride a horse or do gymnastics or shoot a gun. I had too much common sense for that. I had a fairly healthy self-awareness of my abilities, and I found a way to channel only the abilities I had in a productive manner. I think an obvious mistake when you're going into a creative field that one could make would be to connect your value as a person to the success, that you might achieve in that field. Well, I didn't make that connection. I didn't connect my self-worth to whether or not I'm living as an actress. My goal was to keep an even balance between work and personal life and a proper perspective of what mattered: family and friends, and the one foundational value upon which all my other values rest: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I found alternative work while I pursued my acting career. I waited tables for 3.5 years. While I lived in New York. I was a practical girl who was raised to live within her means. I did my homework, I studied, I prepared, I was professional, and I tried to be fun to work with. I was always prompt and demonstrated a generosity to my fellow actors. I listened and I respected the casting directors, the writers, the producers, and so forth. But I think I survived the countless auditions that didn't go my way by keeping my career at arm's length. I guess I thought if I didn't want it too badly, then it wouldn't hurt so much if it didn't go my way. Back in the day, the ratio was 30-to-1. 30 commercial auditions to each job you might actually get. So imagine going on 30 job interviews and getting one job. And that's kind of the way that went. That was the rhythm. I didn't knock on doors or go where I wasn't expected. With rare exception, I didn't write to directors or agents attempting to get their attention. At the few A-list Hollywood parties that I attended, I shrank from talking to powerful people, not wanting them to think I was ingratiating myself for self-serving purposes. And I was nervous that I would reveal my ignorance of the biz, that I wasn't hip enough. And this resistance to sell myself was not hubris. I simply didn't have that muscle. And given my keen discomfort with self-promotion, that I ever worked at all in show business is nothing short of a miracle. I look back now and I wonder, if I had ambition, if I had pushed my representatives to be more aggressive, to get me that audition, that reading with a big director, who knows what I might have achieved. I just knew on some level that wanting it too much might crush me when it didn't happen. And this was self-preservation. This was a small town girl's way of surviving. I spent 3+ years in the city. I did a backers audition early on with classmates from college. I cannot stress enough how important in your future work life and personal life the friendships you make while you're in school will be. Mine have always come back to I call them angels. These people, reappear in your life and circles come full, and it's the people I met in college that continue to be just enormous helps in my life. So a friend got me this audition for this show in the city, a backers audition. We got the money. A backers audition is when you do a play and the producers are looking for someone to invest. We got the investors. We mounted the show. I got an agent from that show. This is all within the first 2 to 3 months of getting to the city. And I started being sent out for commercials. I booked my first commercial, which was an Oil of Olay commercial at the ripe old age of 23. And I went off to Denver, Colorado, out in a meadow with a horse. And I slowly began to work. While I lived in the city and worked more frequently as an actress, I became a member of all 3 unions: Screen Actors Guild, Actors Equity, and the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, which has since merged with SAG. As I said, I waitressed the entire time and got to know other young women like me, hard workers, dancers, actresses, trying to support themselves and study while they pursued their dream. I happen to know a fellow Oswego graduate, there they are again, who was in the choir of Sweeney Todd, and he invited me to a party. I went to my first big social occasion in the entertainment industry. Hal Prince's home the night his production of Sweeney Todd swept the Tony Awards. And there I was, meeting Angela Lansbury, one of my idols, and Lynn Cariou, who played Sweeney. And who comes in on Angela's arm? Well, Rock Hudson, of all people. And this was I'm just a little kid from upstate New York, and there I am with people like that, and I could barely speak. I was awestruck. Now it's 1980, and I'm 24 years old, and actresses like Kate Jackson and Karen Allen and Jacqueline Smith were paving the way for brunettes. And my agents advised me that Hollywood was ripe for my type, and I should move there. They set me up with a manager, and he invited me to give Hollywood a try. January of 1981, I begrudgingly drove out to LA in a Dodge Colt with my younger brother, Christopher. And I vowed if it didn't work within 6 months, I was going back to my favorite state. In the 5th month, I got a small part in a movie of the week with John Ritter called In Love with an Older Woman. And that was that. I stayed in LA for 18 years. In 1983, Star Trek happened to me, about as sweetly and easily and as generously as any one thing has ever happened to me. If the role of Savick represented one spin of the roulette wheel, I hit the jackpot. I met Leonard Nimoy at Paramount in a one-on-one meeting. He said, I have no doubt you can play the part at the end of that meeting. And a few weeks later, after successfully screen testing my hair and makeup as Savick on the set with the actor who played David, Merritt Buttrick, I got the call that I was cast. Star Trek became this bright, unexpected light while my family was suffering the darkness. My full-of-life dad, the Johnny Carson of our lives, who made us feel so special and laugh so hard it hurt, was diagnosed with brain tumors at the age of 53. I remember saying to him through tears, Dad, at least we don't have to do all the things we never did together and say all the things we never said to one another, because we did it all and we've said it all, and now we're just going to fight this thing. Our family expressed love daily in words and actions. I brought one of my father's, this is the kind of thing he would send to me. He wrote letters longhand, but sometimes he would send it like it was an announcement. Wanted, a way to tell you how much we love you and still get it in the envelope. From the League of Happy Fathers with warm, lovely, and talented daughters. Robert Curtis, President. And let me tell you, the best place to be in the whole world is inside a Bob Curtis hug. Well, he lived long enough to see The Search for Spock in June of 1984, and he was gone by that November. That last year of his life, through the pain he endured and the agony we felt watching him and wishing we could make it stop, Star Trek gave us something to look forward to. It was our miraculous distraction, and I will be grateful to my own dying day that Star Trek blessed my family this way. The great irony was that Robin Curtis was cast as a Vulcan character, a race known for their lack of emotional expression. Maybe I couldn't step ball change or pas de deux, but I sure as hell knew how to access my emotions. Now, back in the day, my mother and I wept at ads for McDonald's and Hallmark cards. So a small part of me was baffled that Leonard Nimoy chose me to play his kindred spirit, Savick. And I went to work every day of those 8 weeks grateful I wasn't greeted with a pink slip. Star Trek has been a truly wondrous association for me. I've traveled the world. I've met the most amazing human beings, people like you. And for a little while, we shared our stories, much laughter, and life's sweet abundance, either by the time we shared together, or the meal we shared, the convention time, or some exotic locale. And all because of Gene Roddenberry. I worked enough in LA that eventually I realized I didn't have to get a second job, so I never did wait tables in Los Angeles. With a little glue, paste, and tape, I used to say I could put all my jobs together and actually call my work life a career. You know, you put that national commercial for American Express next to the guest starring role on Night Court with the low-budget film called The Unborn 2 at Roger Corman's studio, alongside an episode of The Scarecrow and Mrs. King, 3 Star Trek conventions and a Folgers coffee campaign, and bingo, I made a living. Enough of a living back then to support myself and qualify for health care. And enough work cumulatively over 25 years to collect a modest Screen Actors Guild pension today. Not bad. And I'm filled with profound gratitude. One aspect of my life that didn't go the way I planned was my love life. I had a sort of a crazy romance in college. And this romance began in college and lasted 3 years beyond. And when it didn't become the white picket life fence I fully expected it to, I admit, I lost my way a little bit. Because I thought to myself, if that relationship, which was so deeply loving and big, didn't qualify for happily ever after, I didn't have a clue what to expect from love, or what a lasting love would look like or feel like. I've been married 3 times. That's not what I dreamt of or hoped for, but it happened, and I'm not ashamed. I gave each marriage everything I had. The one common denominator was me, that's true, but I think it was the speed with which I married that was probably my downfall. In all 3 situations, I was engaged within 3 months of first meeting the gentleman and married in less than a year. And that's simply not enough time to know someone well enough to marry them. I'm proud that despite my unhappiness, I didn't leave any of my husbands for another man, nor did my husbands leave me for another woman. When a marriage ends, there's enough disappointment and sadness to go around. Inflicting further damage by betraying your spouse, well, that just seemed unfathomable and cowardly to me. And each time my marriage limped to its end, my ex-husbands and I took advantage of couples counseling so that nothing was left unsaid or unfinished between us. That's so important. Endings need the same attention and care as beginnings. Remember that. Be accountable in your relationships and be kind. When I ended my first marriage at 35, I chose to continue counseling on an individual basis, to get my equilibrium as a single person again. And after I poured my heart out to Steve, our therapist, for almost 3 years, I was ready to move on. I was ready to move on without my weekly sessions. So I asked Steve, what words would you leave me with? Do you know what he said? He said, Robin, keep your pajamas on. I cried when he said this, because he remembered my little story, because he really cared about me, and I felt seen, and because he was right. Perhaps if I'd kept my pajamas on a little while longer, I might have discovered before I married that my husbands and I weren't as compatible as we both hoped. Keep your pajamas on, Robin. Back when I was just beginning to hit my stride in showbiz, there was a leader in my profession, someone who I deeply admired and who helped to keep expectations real from a challenging profession. I'm talking about Meryl Streep. She exposed the gross inequities in income between the male and female members of Screen Actors Guild. The hiring statistics for older actresses were abysmal. Meryl forecast the rich supply of actresses over 40, chasing the ever-diminishing number of quality roles. And although I was making a living at the time and I hadn't reached that age yet, I credit her for predicting that likely past a certain point, things would change for me. And when that time came that my career wasn't earning what it used to, I didn't grieve or wish my life had gone differently. I came to a peaceful acceptance, and I left acting. I will admit here that the sentimental me wanted to acknowledge this decision in some public way, because nobody gives you a watch or a goodbye dinner when you leave acting. So I said to my ex-husband, Kent, I'm thinking about taking a full page in Variety, thanking the people I've worked with through the years and saying goodbye. He said, why? Nobody cares. How much does it cost? $1,000, I told him.